Welcome back to 535. Joining us now is Congressman James Walkinshaw from the great Fairfax County. New. You were a staffer for Jerry Conley for how many years?
11 years, 2009 to 2020.
Did you work for him when he was the county executive also?
I did, yeah. I started working for him in 2007. He was chairman of the Fairfax County Board.
Okay, so you've worked as a staffer at the county executive, county board level. You have been a chief of staff. What is it like to make that shift from being the guy behind the guy to being one of the 535 members?
Right. So in 2019, when I was elected to the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, sworn in 2020, I had to make that transition on a maybe lower profile scale than this. And there's, I think, two significant differences. One, I spent 11 years as a staffer standing in the back of the room as my boss was in the front of the room, giving the speech or answering the questions. And at the end of it, I could say, well, here's some things you could have said better or differently, right? It's a little easier to be the guy with the critique after the fact than to be up there having to speak for yourself. So that's a different challenge. The other piece is the psychological and emotional weight is a little bit heavier, right? So when you're giving recommendations or advice as a staffer, that's obviously serious, and I took that seriously. But now when it's me, with my name on the door, having to make the decisions that impact people's lives, you stay awake a little bit longer and feel a little bit more of that pressure to make sure you're making the right decisions.
Have you introduced, forgive me, I'm blanking on this, have you introduced a bill yourself so far? And what was the very first one?
Yes, I introduced a bill on the day that I was sworn in on September 10th. And it's a bill that would require the president, any president, to come to Congress for an up or down vote before they could significantly slash the agency or workforce of a federal agency, or the budget or workforce of a federal agency. Obviously, a lot of my constituents have been hurt by DOGE and that chainsaw, that kind of, in my view, reckless unilateral approach. And I think members of Congress should have to vote yes or no if we're going to dismantle the Department of Education or USAID.
Do you have a ballpark figure of how many federal workers and or federal contractors there are in your district?
Yeah. So I represent somewhere between 50 and 60,000 federal workers. And if you take the 300,000 plus federal job loss number nationally, it's roughly 10%, a little more than 10% of the total federal workforce, like 5,000 to 10,000 people in my district out of work because of DOGE and those policies. I also represent hundreds of thousands of folks who work for federal contractors, from the biggest names that you would have heard of to small one-person veteran-owned small businesses that serve the government.
Okay, what has surprised you so far about this job?
I get that question. Not too much has surprised me because I did spend 11 years here, including during President Trump's first term. So I had some idea of what to expect. I will say, and I knew this intellectually, but when you experience the pace of events, it's a different kind of experience to live through it. And this is an administration, in my view, that's reckless, and every minute of every day is ping-ponging us from crisis to crisis to crisis. And that's been a different experience to live through and try to respond to.
Have you had a chance to make some sort of friendship so far with anyone from the other side of the aisle that surprised you?
I wouldn't say not surprised me, and I have started to do that. It's important to note I'm in month 7. And a big chunk of that was the first shutdown when my Republican colleagues were not here. So I missed that window of time to build those relationships. But there are a number of Republicans, some of whom serve on the Homeland Security Oversight Committee with me, that I've developed, a rapport with, especially others who, maybe are on the younger side and, like me, juggling the demands of this job with the demands of their families. So I've started to develop that. And, that kind of stuff does still take place, probably not as much as it did 10, 20, or 30 years ago, but it does.
All right. Thank you for joining us, James Walkinshaw. This was 535.
Thanks, Paul.